Colorado Territory, 1876. A single act of kindness in a world built on cruelty. They say no good deed goes unpunished. In the town of Silveridge, they proved it. When Solomon Reed, a black rancher with land that men coveted, fed a starving child in a saloon filled with hate, he couldn't know what forces he'd set in motion. Justice wears a different face in every town. Sometimes it hides behind a badge, sometimes behind the eyes of a child. What happened next would shake a frontier town to its core and expose the rot beneath its respectability. This is the story they don't teach in history books, the story of how one man's compassion collided with a town's darkest secrets. Stay until the final chapter, because what that orphan boy revealed in that courtroom will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about justice in the American West. If this story moves you, hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who needs to hear that sometimes. Sometimes, heroes come from where we least expect them. Welcome to The Black Rancher, where we uncover the forgotten stories of courage, integrity, and resilience from America's frontier. I'm here to share the true tales that history tried to erase, the remarkable stories of black cowboys, ranchers, and pioneers who helped build the West against incredible odds. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell. These stories deserve to be told, and I promise you'll never look at American history the same way again. Now let's ride back to 1876, to a mining town called Silveridge, where a black rancher's simple act of kindness was about to change everything. Colorado Territory, May 1876. Solomon Reed pulled his coat tighter against the unseasonable spring chill as he hitched his horse outside the Silver Dollar Saloon. At 41, he carried himself with the quiet dignity of a man who had bought his freedom with blood and sweat, then bought his land the same way. The Crescent Valley Ranch had grown to nearly 1,200 acres of prime grazing land, over 15 years of backbreaking work. His cattle were the finest in the territory, his horses sought after by buyers from as far as Kansas City. Solomon had built something remarkable, something that made certain men in Silveridge watch him with eyes that calculated what they might take. "Your kind drinks from the back door, boy," barked Harlan, the Silver Dollar's burly bartender, as Solomon stepped inside. Solomon stood his ground. "I'm here on business with Mr. Donovan. He asked to meet me here." James Donovan, the cattle broker who'd arranged the sale of 30 head to the army at Fort Collins, waved from a corner table. "Let him through, Harlan. He's here on my invitation." The transaction was quick. The army had paid well, and Donovan handed over a leather pouch heavy with coins. Solomon was counting them when he felt eyes on him. He looked up to find a boy, no more than 10 or 11, watching him from across the room. The child was rail-thin, with hollow cheeks and clothes more whole than fabric. He stood near the piano player, trying to be invisible, his eyes fixed on the stew Solomon had ordered, but barely touched. Solomon beckoned the boy over. "You hungry, son?" The child nodded, eyes darting nervously around the room. "Sit down, then. Eat your fill." The saloon grew quieter as the boy slid onto the bench opposite Solomon and began to devour the stew with desperate intensity. "Slow down," Solomon advised gently. "It's not going anywhere." From across the saloon, Sheriff Wade Calloway watched with narrowed eyes as he leaned toward Jeb Turner, the town's richest mine owner. Their hushed conversation was punctuated by glances towards Solomon and the boy. When the stew was gone, Solomon ordered pie and coffee for the child. "What's your name, son?" "Tommy, sir. Tommy Black." "Where are your folks?" The boy stared at the table. "Don't have none anymore. Pa died in the mine collapse last winter. Ma took fever after." Solomon nodded, understanding settling on him like a heavy blanket. The boy was alone in the world, surviving however he could. "You got somewhere to sleep tonight?" "The livery lets me stay if I muck stalls." As the boy finished his pie, Solomon placed $3 on the table. "Get yourself some proper food tomorrow, and some socks. Your feet are probably freezing in those boots." The child's eyes widened at the coins. "Why are you helping me, mister?" Solomon considered the question. "Because someone once helped me when I needed it." As he left the saloon, Solomon felt the hostile stares following him. Helping the boy had drawn attention he preferred to avoid. But some things a man couldn't ignore no matter the consequences. He couldn't know that by dawn, His act of kindness would become the excuse some had been waiting for. Solomon woke to pounding on his door before sunrise. He reached for the rifle he kept beside his bed before approaching. "Who's there?" "Sheriff Calloway, open up, Reed." 4 men stood on his porch. Sheriff Calloway, Deputy Mills, and 2 others with badges hastily pinned to their vests. "Solomon Reed, you're under arrest for horse theft," Calloway announced, a thin smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Horse theft? That's nonsense, and you know it." The sheriff produced a warrant. "Army Quartermaster reported a distinctive grey stallion missing after your delivery yesterday. Been identified on your property." "I breed horses, Sheriff. I've got a dozen greys." "This one's got the Army brand," Calloway said. "Already found it in your north pasture. Now you coming quietly or making things worse for yourself?" Solomon recognized the trap. Any resistance would justify violence. "Let me get my coat." News of Solomon Reed's arrest spread through Silveridge like wildfire. By the time they reached the jailhouse, a small crowd had gathered. "Lynch the horse thief," someone shouted. "Take his land," called another. Solomon recognized the voices, men who'd been eyeing his property for years, waiting for an opportunity. This wasn't about a horse. This was about the 1,200 acres of the most fertile land in the valley, owned by a black man who'd prospered despite everything they'd tried. In the sparse jail cell, Solomon sat on the thin mattress calculating his options. Judge Harmon would arrive tomorrow for the monthly circuit court. Harmon was no friend to black folk, but he was known to follow the letter of the law. If Solomon could prove his innocence. But how? The Army brand on the horse was either legitimate or forged with skill. Either way, it was the word of a black rancher against white authorities. In 1876 Colorado, those odds were long indeed. As night fell, the chatter outside his cell told him all he needed to know. "Turner's already got buyers looking at the Reed place," Deputy Mills said to the night jailer. "Shame if it burns down before they can claim it, don't you think?" Solomon closed his eyes, a cold certainty settling in his gut. They meant to take everything he'd built, one way or another. Outside his window, he heard a soft scratching. Looking up, he saw Tommy's face peering through the bars. "Mister." "Reed," the boy whispered. "I saw what they did." "What are you talking about, Tommy?" "Last night. I sleep in the livery sometimes. I saw Sheriff and Mr. Turner bring that gray horse in. They were burning something onto it with a hot iron." Hope flickered in Solomon's chest. "Tommy, that's dangerous knowledge. You need to be careful who you tell." The boy's face was solemn in the moonlight. "I already told someone. Don't worry, Mr. Reed. You helped me. Now I'm gonna help you." Before Solomon could ask more, Tommy disappeared into the darkness. Morning brought a flurry of activity to the small jailhouse. Judge Harmon had arrived on the early stage, and court would convene at noon. Jeb Turner appeared at Solomon's cell shortly after breakfast, flanked by his lawyer, a pinch-faced man named Pritchard. "Unfortunate business, Reed," Turner said, not bothering to hide his smile. "But I'm a reasonable man. Sign over your land to me now and I'll make sure the charges disappear. You'll be free to leave the territory by sundown." Solomon looked him in the eye. "I'd rather hang than give you a single acre of my land, Turner." Turner's smile vanished. "That can be arranged." As they left, Sheriff Calloway approached the cell. "No one's coming to speak for you, Reed. No lawyer in town will take your case." "Then I'll speak for myself." "Your funeral," the sheriff shrugged. "Trial's at noon." By 11, the crowd outside the courthouse had grown. Solomon could hear them from his cell, calls for frontier justice, for a rope rather than a trial. The atmosphere was turning ugly. At 11:30, Deputy Mills came to escort him to the courthouse. As they walked the short distance, Solomon held his head high despite the jeers and insults. His land meant everything to him, not just the acres, but what they represented: freedom, independence. The promise he'd made on his father's grave to build something that could never be taken away. Now it all hung by the thinnest thread of justice. The makeshift courtroom was packed. Solomon stood alone at the defendant's table, keenly aware of the hostile faces surrounding him. Judge Harmon, a stern man with iron-gray hair and piercing blue eyes, took his seat at the bench and called the court to order. Just as the proceedings were about to begin, the courthouse doors swung open. A distinguished older gentleman in an expensive suit walked in, followed by Tommy Black and another man Solomon didn't recognize. "Your Honor," the gentleman said in a commanding voice, "Federal Marshal James Blackwood. I'd like to address the court before these proceedings continue." The crowd murmured in surprise. Judge Harmon frowned. "This is highly irregular, Marshal. We're about to begin a trial for horse theft." "That's precisely why I'm here, Your Honor." "May I approach?" As the Marshal spoke quietly with the judge, Solomon noticed Tommy standing straight-backed beside him, looking somehow older than he had the day before. After a moment, Judge Harmon's eyebrows rose dramatically. He cleared his throat and addressed the courtroom. "There's been a development in this case. The boy will sit with me during these proceedings. Marshal Blackwood will join the defense. Court will recess for 30 minutes while they confer." Confusion rippled through the crowd as Tommy was escorted to a chair beside the judge's bench. Solomon found himself ushered to a side room where Marshal Blackwood waited. "Mr. Reed," the marshal said, extending his hand, "I understand you've had a difficult 24 hours. What's happening? Who are you really?" Blackwood smiled. "Exactly who I said. Federal Marshal out of Denver. That boy found me at my hotel this morning with quite a story. Said a good man was being framed for something he didn't do. And you believed him just like that?" "Not just like that. Tommy took me to the livery, showed me some very interesting evidence. Then I had a talk with the Army quartermaster, who supposedly reported the theft." Blackwood's eyes hardened. "Funny thing, he never reported any horses missing." For the first time since his arrest, Solomon felt hope. What evidence did Tommy find? And why is he sitting beside the judge? If you're riveted by this story of injustice and unexpected allies, you're watching The Black Rancher, where we bring you the untold stories of courage and resilience from America's frontier. Hit that subscribe button right now and ring that notification bell, because what happens next in this courtroom will change everything for Solomon Reed and the town of Silveridge forever. Now let's return to that tense courtroom, where justice hangs in the balance. When court resumed, the atmosphere had shifted. Sheriff Calloway and Jeb Turner whispered furiously at the prosecution table, while Marshal Blackwood sat calmly beside Solomon. Judge Harmon called the court to order. "Given new evidence brought to my attention, I'm altering the procedures of this hearing. Young Tommy Black will testify first." Tommy approached the witness stand, looking small but determined. "Son, do you swear to tell the truth before this court?" "I do, Your Honor." "Please tell the court what you witnessed 2 nights ago." Tommy took a deep breath. "I was sleeping in the loft at Pickering's livery when I heard men come in late. It was Sheriff Calloway, Mr. Turner, and Deputy Mills. They brought in a gray horse I hadn't seen before." "And what did these men do?" "They had a branding iron. They heated it up red hot and burned a mark onto the horse's flank. Mr. Turner said it had to look exactly like the Army brand. Then Sheriff Calloway said they'd plant it at the Negroes' ranch before first light, and that by this time tomorrow, Turner will have the Reed place." Furious denials erupted from the prosecution table. Judge Harmon banged his gavel. "Order! Mr. Black, why should this court believe your account over that of established town officials?" Tommy looked directly at the sheriff. "Because I took this from the livery after they left." He reached into his pocket and produced a folded piece of paper. The marshal handed it to the judge, who examined it with widening eyes. "This appears to be a document transferring ownership of the Reed property to Mr. Turner, requiring only the defendant's signature." Turner shot to his feet. "That proves nothing. The boy's lying to protect the horse thief who fed him." "I'm not finished," Tommy said quietly. "I also took this." From his other pocket, he produced a small metal object, a branding iron barely 6 inches long. "It's a counterfeit Army brand. They hid it in the feed bin, but I dug it out." The courtroom erupted in chaos. Sheriff Calloway lunged toward the boy, but Marshal Blackwood moved faster, restraining him with surprising strength for his age. "Order!" Judge Harmon shouted, banging his gavel repeatedly. "I will have order!" When the room quieted, the judge continued. "Marshal Blackwood, you've investigated these claims." "I have, Your Honor. The quartermaster at Fort Collins confirms no horses are missing. Furthermore, I examined the gray stallion supposedly stolen. The brand is fresh and improperly sized compared to authentic army marks. Judge Harmon's face darkened. Sheriff Calloway, Mr. Turner, approached the bench immediately. What followed was one of the most remarkable moments in Silveridge history. As the extent of the conspiracy unfolded, gasps and murmurs filled the courtroom. The judge ordered both men into custody pending formal charges of fraud, evidence tampering, and conspiracy. This court finds the charges against Solomon Reed entirely without merit and dismisses them with prejudice, Judge Harmon declared. Mr. Reed is free to go. My sincere apologies for this miscarriage of justice. As Solomon prepared to leave, Judge Harmon called Tommy forward again. Young man, your bravery today is commendable. However, I understand you have no guardian or home. No, sir, Tommy admitted. The judge looked thoughtful. As it happens, I've been looking for a court assistant, someone to help organize my papers and learn the workings of the law. Would such a position interest you? Tommy's eyes widened. Yes, sir, very much. Excellent. We'll discuss arrangements after court. The judge turned to Solomon. Unless, Mr. Reed, you have any objection? I understand the boy has formed an attachment to you. Solomon looked at Tommy, this brave child who had risked everything to save him. I think the boy should decide his own future, Your Honor. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the courthouse steps as Solomon prepared to return to his ranch. To his surprise, Tommy appeared beside him, clutching a small bundle of possessions. Judge said I should talk to you before I decide, the boy said. About what? About whether I should go with him to Denver or, Tommy hesitated, or if I might come stay at your ranch instead. Solomon blinked in surprise. Did the judge suggest that? No, sir. That was my idea, but he said it would be proper if you were willing. Said he could arrange guardianship papers. Solomon studied the boy who had saved everything he'd built. Ranch work is hard, Tommy. Harder than being a judge's assistant. I'm not afraid of hard work, Mr. Reed. And folks might talk, seeing a white boy living with a black rancher. Tommy shrugged. Folks always talk, doesn't make them right. Marshal Blackwood approached, smiling at their conversation. Judge Harmon is a good man, Tommy. He'd give you education, opportunity. I know, sir. But, Solomon prompted, seeing the hesitation on the boy's face. But I never had nobody who just helped me because I needed it. Not till you. Tommy looked up at Solomon. That means something. Solomon felt something shift inside him, a space opening where he hadn't known emptiness existed. I could use help with the horses, he said finally, and I've got a spare room that's never been used. Tommy's face lit up. You mean it? If that's what you want. Later that evening, as they rode together toward Crescent Valley Ranch, Tommy asked the question that had been lingering since that first meeting. Mr. Reed, you said someone helped you once, like you helped me. Who was it? Solomon was quiet for a long moment, memories washing over him. A man named William Thornton. I was barely free, with nothing to my name but determination. He saw something in me worth believing in. Taught me ranching, sold me my first plot of land when no one else would. What happened to him? Died in '68, left me his prized stallion, the foundation of my breeding stock. Solomon smiled at the memory, said he never had a son to leave it to. They crested the final hill, and the Crescent Valley Ranch spread before them, golden in the sunset light. It's beautiful, Tommy whispered. It's home, Solomon replied, realizing as he said it that the word now meant something more than it had yesterday. Now come on, we've got horses to feed before supper. As they rode toward the ranch house, Solomon found himself thinking about cycles breaking and new ones forming. How a simple act of kindness, feeding a hungry child, had saved everything he'd built and given him something he hadn't known he needed. Family. Sometimes the smallest kindnesses change lives forever. Sometimes justice comes from unexpected quarters. And sometimes family is found in the most unlikely places. If this story touched your heart, please hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that goodness can prevail even in the darkest circumstances. This is The Black Rancher, bringing you the forgotten stories of America's frontier. The true stories of courage, integrity, and resilience that built this nation. Stories that deserve to be told. I'll be back next week with another remarkable tale from our shared history. Until then, remember that every act of kindness, no matter how small, can change the world in ways we can't imagine. Thank you for watching, and God bless.